So I teased a bit with the Quantum Menace thing on Twitter, saying that I'm a Star Trek person and the title of a Star Wars movie. And I sort of promised Star Wars puns, which I won't deliver. You know, that's making you a little surprised. However, so yeah, basically what I do is people pay me to envision bad things that could happen to them and to prevent them. And when they don't listen, they also pay me to, you know, pick up the pieces when, you know, shit hits the fan. So, and also, yeah, well, of course, I write things, including this one, and perhaps another one coming up on IoT security, but that's still a perhaps. So, yeah, talking about IoT security. Oh, we have this thing there. It's okay.
Do you want me to move it?
No, it's okay. So why is it interesting? Well, because you know you get to laugh at things like this, which is like your toaster won't toast anything until it gets its software update, and then it will reset, and then it will eventually, you know, grill your slice of bread, and then you also get things like mugs, which are installing software updates, and you cannot have your coffee until the software update is complete. And then, of course, you get my favorite sort of things, which is a pizza order button added to a sex toy, with the very bourgeois invitation of get off and get stuffed. Meaning, the time you get off, the delivery guy will come with the pizza so you get stuffed. Very, very, very delicate and so on. But where this all brings us is to that sort of things. So I do have this. I'm not using it because of what I found as security issues with it. However, I was really, really attracted by it, not because of the color, right? It's very pink, it's too pink. But because last year there was a company producing a plugin which makes it vibrate according to market fluctuations of Bitcoin and Ether. Having both of those crypto coins, I was really looking forward to experiencing, you know, that full experience. However, other people do use it, and it's where, you know, because generally when I talk about connected textiles, people are like, are there any people actually using this? And I'm like, yes. So this is one use case where you get cam-girls or cam-boys, you know, depending on what you prefer to watch, using that sort of connected toys. And here you have an example of a cam-girl chat room where a visitor tips and gets temporary control over the toy because it connects on the internet. So the more you tip, the longer you control it, and the higher the vibrations you can send. And yeah, for your information, Chaturbate only puts 3 cookies on your site, on your internet browser. Sorry, so you can safely go there. Compared to French boutique.laposte.fr, which puts 46. So I would gladly stick to Chaturbate, however, it doesn't sell parcels too well. Anyhow, then you get, you know, so we're pretty much laughing at this one, but then you get things which, like this, a connected thermometer through whose companion app you can basically log fevers, symptoms, and things like this. So if you're parents to young kids, that's good. The data is also sent to your doctor, which is also good. And then there are other companies commercializing health-related things, such as disinfecting wipes, which basically get the data from your thermometer and display related apps into the companion, related advertisements, into the companion app. You know, and then you get that sort of very interesting but hardly reassuring thing, which is anal thermometer that connects to the internet. And since the app also asks access to the mic of your phone and to the multimedia content, you also get to have the sound and the image. Anyhow, but then, you know, those things are pretty serious because we are talking about people's sex lives, about their health and the health of their kids. And we are also talking about what's starting to emerge as a more society-related problem where you have harassment happening through those objects, right? So this piece came at the New York Times this summer, and it tells the story of mostly women who, after breaking up with their abusive partners, are experiencing harassment through connected objects. Why? Because society thinks males are the geekiest ones, so when things like this are installed, the male keeps the control, and when he leaves the relationship, well, he keeps the control again. And so mainly women come up with that harassment stories of their thermostats, like skyrocketing temperature or you know, to the contrary, unable to unlock their door, or lights going off and on and at any time in the day and night, and so on and so forth. And of course, so for the French impaired, I'll translate. So every time I talk about this, I'll always have a person like this coming along and saying, look, there is one and only precaution: never, caps lock, buy anything that connects to the internet, toys or otherwise. Because if it connects to the internet, or we can access it at a distance, it is full of security vulnerabilities, and let alone if probable malevolence from the vendor. To which I generally respond, okay, one and only precaution if you don't want to be hit by a bus, just, you know, don't get out of home. I mean, you cannot tell people don't buy anything just because there is a security problem with it. Probable security problem. Not all of them are that shitty. So the thing is, instead of, you know, displacing responsibility from the vendors and from us as a professional community, we are putting it on the consumers and saying, just don't buy this. Okay, so next time I decide I don't want to be hit by a bus, I do what? I stay at home. So that's why, of course, I mean, where the person is right is that most of the time, security standards in connected devices are like there. You know, those people still live in the 90s, security-wise, for different reasons, right? That we can discuss much more about during the question session. But the thing that mostly concerns us as professionals is how do we study those objects, right? Because that's still an immature industry. There are a lot of things just moving forward and evolving as we speak. Like when I started being interested in connected objects, we were having Bluetooth low energy version 3, now we have version 4. That was just a mere year and a half ago. So yeah, there are a lot of things evolving. And the tools, well, everyone comes up with stuff. And so when I'm telling you about the difficulty to having tools, it's, oh sorry, I forgot to change the French to English on this one. Anyhow, so this is a scheme I drew when the first time I was doing research on connected sex toys again. So this one is from a male sex toy. So the idea is what? You have a big thing like this, you put this female organ-like thing into it, and it goes this, right? So you get the picture. And the sensation, perhaps, I have no idea. Not biologically. Anyhow. So, but the point is, the thingy connects through Bluetooth to your phone. After pairing happens, you can control it with the app, which app, of course, through the Wi-Fi connection the phone has, talks to some distant servers, whenever you're lucky, through a HTTPS connection. And, you know, and then you also can have third-party services. in this case, there is a website which brands itself as the go-to resource about all things connected, sex and stuff. For example, you could have your favorite blowjob video being there and synchronizing the movements the lady or the guy does with your sex toy. I'm guessing people like that. From a security perspective, however, we have all those things happening, right? All 1 zillion connections with totally like different protocols and applications at any step. And then you get things like this. That's from another sex toy I audited where, I was curious that they have a test and production server on the same space, and it's accessed with a self-signed certificate, and then when I decompiled the app, it came up that, well, they don't need a proper certificate because everything goes to in clear text. And of course I saw it in the network, like in the PCAP, where I just saw my presumed email address go through. And I realized that they apply very strong security to passwords. That's MD5 hash of my password. And the hash itself is also used as an access token. You're welcome. So where we go with that story is that difficulties to analyze and audit and secure connected devices come also from its very nature, because a connected device is an ecosystem. So you don't just look at the device itself, you also look at the Bluetooth connection, because that's most often the case. It has to a smartphone, which generally is non-protected, or with a very strong password such as 1234, that you also find in the FAQ section of the website most often. The companion app that sits on the web on your smartphone. Well, the cloud, because the companion app just talks to I don't know how many servers, and the internet connection over which it talks to those servers. So that's why with a friend of mine, who is my partner in crime into this, we created a tool suite to approach and address, well, at least a big part of those issues, of those components of the ecosystem. So we have the PyRogue, which is a Raspberry Pi Kali Linux modified device that creates a dedicated network with which you can basically collect whatever traces you like. Because when you do it through your test phone, given that vendors of phones install thousands of apps by default on them, your traces are generally polluted. You have no idea whether that Instagram connection was actually the companion app you were studying or the phone itself. Same for Facebook, right? Then we have, once you have captured all the traces you need, we put them in high pressures. So for Lord of the Rings fans, you'll recognize this. For the others, it's a very bad fun. So that we have this platform where we store all the traces with all the components of this ecosystem, and where we have sessions that you can just replay as they are, and basically compare traces between different setups in time and so on and so forth. So you just, you can go to the GitHub. We haven't updated it in a while, although if you saw the internal GitLab, it's pretty active. Anyhow, so as I said, you can also analyze specific apps, regardless of whether they are connected to a sex toy or not, or an IoT of any kind, by the way. So I looked at this Météo Bordeaux app yesterday, because what I wanted to talk to you about is application security rather than IoT security, right? And so I looked at the app. So you both, I guess most of you know this app. It tells you the weather forecast in Bordeaux. And it does so for different cities, Nantes, Rennes, Reims, and so on. Anyhow, so that's the welcome screen you're greeted with. As a compliance person, first thing I did is go to the privacy policy, and it tells me that optionally it collects email address, should someone want to make a user account, and geolocation, which is, well, sort of normal because, you know, for it to provide a city-specific weather forecast where it needs to know where you are. But what it actually requires as personal data that it collects non-laterally, it's advertisement account. Advertisement ID. And then it says, we don't use any cookies to gather more information concerning you. And this is Ghostery, so this is the Tor browser, right? And with a plugin called Ghostery installed, which tells me that, well, actually that's not true, because there are at least 5 trackers about specific advertisement, you know, programmatically advertisements and things like this. So, and we are here on the privacy section, right? And then what I looked at is the permissions it asks. The app asks from your phone upon installation. So of course it asks for a geolocation, which Google considers to be a dangerous thing, but that's fine. What I didn't understand is why it requires to work to be able to write on external storage. There is no explanation whatsoever on that. And this is how basically the PyPrecious interface looks as of today, which tells you up there the experiment session you are into, the phone, the test phone on which it has been tested, and there the Laundry logo is basically where we put the APK, you know, the executable of this app. And there is no IoT device associated because we are not testing an IoT device. And basically, we apply different rules. So for malware researchers here, you know of Yaha, which is an open source tool for detecting different signatures. So we basically, since it's open source, we transformed it into a tool to detect different types of information that are consumed by different distance servers and other apps on the phone when focusing on one given application. So here what we have is that, okay, you have Crashlytics, you have app measurement and things like this, collecting things like application handle. That's pretty normal. Crashlytics gives you analytics about the performance of your application, so it needs to know what the app is, what's its version, and so on and so forth. And we are also tracking the IP address to which it's sent, whether it's over HTTPS or not, and a few other things. And where things get funny, well, depending on your sense of humor, is when you realize that your geolocation, which is considered a rather sensitive information, personal data actually, is sent over HTTP. We didn't dig further to see how often it is sent. But, you know, with Google Analytics, you're generally up to, like, in a toy we tested, we were up to 6 times per second. So, you know, it's pretty often because the service promises to give you information as often as necessary. And well, for it, necessary can be like up to 6 or 8 times a second, which is very necessary apparently. So of course we do blame developers, right? Because they're the main people who do these things, right? And for older person like me, some may know the developers talk by former Microsoft big person, Steve Ballmer, if I remember correctly, right? So because developers are to blame, let's see what they are doing wrong. Well, for people, say, less aware, with application development, this is more or less how an app is built. You have the source code. Most often it's Java, but you can also have it as JavaScript and so on. If it's Java, it's generally compiled, so you have mostly jar files. And then you have different assets. And what people add a lot is SDKs. That's sort of a library. Anyone can use it. I need a button, I just put an SDK that does a button. That's it. Which means that I have something that does only one thing. I want a button, I put an SDK that does a button. Full stop. Someone else is taking care of it because I'm not, reinventing the wheel every time. I'm just taking what exists. However, where things get messy is that if you don't have SDKs specific, such as Facebook or other advertisement-related SDKs, you cannot monetize your application. So this is, an idea of what advertisement providers get the lion's share in SDKs included in apps. So here you have thousands of apps, and the top 5 is Google. Then you have Facebook, and there in between you have Flurry, which is now Yahoo, if I'm correct. But yeah, basically you get the picture, right? So those are all SDKs that you can find in applications. And the people putting this forward are an NGO, French NGO called Exodus Privacy, which some of you may have heard of. And for example, for the Météo Bordeaux application, Exodus finds 14 advertisement trackers, right? So we looked at Madvertise, which is very famous in France, which you find at a whole range of different apps. I was just about to tell you that you have a lot of SDKs, including malicious ones, because since anyone can use them, well, anyone can use them, including malicious actors. And for example, this ejecting thing is more or less the equivalent of Google Ads in China, and I found it into a seemingly American sex toy and health toy thing, and it basically mimics the whole Google ecosystem, but sends stuff to China. And so an SDK, basically, what is it? It's something called AAR, that I always forget the name. Basically, you use this AAR thing when you do Java applications for two things. Either when you have multiple Android apps, but you want them to share common features, or in the other situation, I have, for example, a free app and a paid app, but I want still to have, the same common features. So I will use those things. So what we did is we have a small tool that analyzes those SDKs, and we took Madvertise. And what we did is, first we determined which methods call sensitive Android functions from that advertisement SDK. Then we looked at the permissions that it needs. And then the URLs that are inscribed into it. That means which are the distant servers it connects to. And for example, for an advertisement SDK, it asks you for access network state, or access Wi-Fi state. And if you have access Wi-Fi state, you can also geolocate someone. That's quite straightforward. And also it connects to different distant servers that are all related to apps. Not a surprise. What it does there, what does it send, we're still digging. So that's the sort of things you can have with SDKs. And then when we talk about this, when we talk about connecting to distant servers, we also talk about APIs. And to my knowledge, this company is the only connected sex toy company that has CVEs, reported with the critical impact, which is interesting, to its account. So and there, the problem was specifically with the API. So when in an afternoon we could confirm that you can register with a fake email. That means create a fake account, and there will be no verification that you're an actual person, that the email actually exists, and so on and so forth. Once you have entered this, you have an account, and then without even having the app or anything, just through the API, we could mobilize this quick control function that allows you to send vibes, over the internet to some people. And you can basically do it to absolutely any user. You just type, ID number, like, at random, and if the user exists, well, it sends them vibes, You could use public profiles, like, again, by typing, IDs at random. And also see any profile, even if it's private. And so we could geolocate, like, around a few hundred of people in France, just through the API, who have declared themselves as being transsexual and using the toy at that moment. And I just picked 5 ID at random, and Googled them, that's very advanced research, and I was able to identify them within like 5 minutes or so. So then I just shut down the whole thing, and I'm not looking at it anymore. So and yeah, those people actually, we are not sure. We haven't looked at it anymore, but we are not sure that it's been fixed. However, when the CV report came up, people basically considered that all the data was available on the internet, just for grabs. So yeah, developers. So where I'm going with all this, other than scare you off of buying connected devices and connected sex toys, is that we need really to think what we're doing, but also how we are doing things. Because to my knowledge, I'm not a reference, however, so correct me if I'm wrong, there is no automation tool helping you to analyze and secure an API. When you do dynamic analysis, meaning you decompile apps or SDKs, that's illegal in Europe. You can only do it for interoperability purposes. So what I'm telling you here is not very legal, right? Like the things I have done are not greatly legal, right? We asked for permission, we have a good lawyer, but still, So we're finding ways of not doing this, like using empty apps